From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Suni Gray. "86 Venezuelan migrants are returning home from Argentina on Wednesday. Almost 3,000 Venezuelans in Latin America have been repatriated under the Return to the Homeland program. Many have criticized the poor living conditions and exploitation they faced while abroad.
Here I have worked since 8:30 in the morning until 10:30 in the evening. You are given 1 hour for lunch and you work for 14 hours every day. I only had half Sunday to rest. I worked like this for 6-7 months.
It is hard because my initial plan was to bring my family, but then it gets hard, and at the end you need to choose between being a migrant or your family. So returning is the only way to be with them."
Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, has the details.
86 Venezuelan citizens are returning home thanks to the Return to the Homeland plan. The initiative, boosted by President Nicolás Maduro, gives them the chance to return and overcome the difficult situation they have faced here in Argentina. They say they have suffered work exploitation and lack of health care. For that reason, the most affected Venezuelan citizens have been given priority in this first group that is returning. More Venezuelan citizens have signed up and are already registered in a waiting list. So far, around 1,000 people have registered. In this Venezuelan embassy, we have seen emotional moments of joy and hope. They have lived in uncertainty, and now they have the chance to start all over in their country.
The Workers' Party in Brazil has a new presidential candidate less than a month to the presidential election. Our correspondent Andre Vieira has the details in this report.
The Workers' Party handed over the presidential candidacy to Fernando Haddad. He will replace former President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva in the electoral race. Hundreds of people gathered in Curitiba to support Haddad and to protest the decision of the judiciary not to allow Lula run.
Haddad will continue Lula's project. He will build a better country for all of us, a country with public policies that takes into account the black community in universities, that brings back the housing project. He will promote policies to take care of us, different from the government of Michel Temer.
An act to denounce that Lula suffers a persecution process and that the justice of Brazil has not taken the honest decision to keep Lula da Silva as candidate. Through a letter read by one of the founders of the party, Lula indicated Haddad as his candidate.
No suppressor can be bigger than the people. That is why our ideas will reach everybody through the voice of the people, higher and louder than the lies of Globo. That is, I want to ask all of you that would vote for me, vote for Fernando Haddad for President of the Republic.
Fernando Haddad has reaffirmed Lula's innocence and called the PT and its militants win October's election.
It's time to go out to the streets with our heads held high and win this election. We're going to win this election for Lula, for the Workers' Party, and for the Communist Party of Brazil, for social movements and for Brazil. Brazil deserves this victory. We're not going to give up.
Social movements are now facing a new battle as they have to campaign in less than a month.
We are facing a historical moment and people know it. We work and fight for Brazil and connect our people to Latin America.
Haddad represents Lula, represents social movements, represents union movements. We are going to support this campaign. There is time to lose. We are going to vote for Haddad.
Fernando Haddad is now expected to build a popular project that gives power to the people. As Lula said, now the new presidential candidate will have to represent him and represent all Brazilians.
Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arias says the system of counting the number of migrants leaving the country is flawed, and he is worried that the numbers are inflated.
A Venezuelan citizen who leaves from Cúcuta, accesses Ecuador, then goes to Chile, and after that to Argentina, is counted 4 times. Of course, that way there are 2 million people. If there is a migration that hasn't existed before, how many are there? 500,000? 600,000? Yes, they exist. We are worried and we want to assist them.
Meanwhile, Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has met with the governor of the China Development Bank. They discussed projects paid for by joint Venezuelan-Chinese funds.
Economic globalization and global governance are being attacked. Nonetheless, China and Venezuela have maintained mutual trust, with the Venezuelan government supporting China in topics of great importance to us, like control of the Southern Sea. Meanwhile, China has supported Venezuela through a special arrangement when oil prices were low.
We recognize that Latin America must look to itself, but it must also foster wider relationships so we may go beyond being seen as the United States' backyard. We need relationships based on the respect of international rights. China agrees with this instance, with fostering cooperation against hegemony.
And Venezuela says it's optimistic about cooperating with China.
This meeting was aimed at expanding cooperation, reinforcing projects, and planning new ones, according to the instructions President Maduro gave us. So this is a way for the Venezuelan people to reach welfare. Cooperation with China will benefit both peoples.
A group of Colombian senators have visited former FARC combatants who are working to re-enter society. Despite their efforts, the former combatants have not received much of what was promised by the government.
Pablo Catatumbo, member of the Peace Commission, stated that the visit to Mira Vale revealed the lack of actions by the government despite the support received from the UN and countries like Norway.
The state can't pass the responsibility to other nations. It is the government's responsibility to apply what they promise.
The senator of the FARC party said that the lands agreed upon in the peace treaties must not serve as confinement spaces and asked for an end to the lies about alleged disagreements between FARC high officials.
Ivan hasn't quit the party nor the peace process. In fact, his letter was another sign of his compromise. These are just lies being spread by enemies of the peace process.
Other senators stated that the former combatants are committed to this project and highlighted the progress that has already been made.
This project is working, despite the government's lack of action towards peace. The productive projects developed here are really important for the whole region.
Senator Ivan Cepeda said that the state abandonment is just one of the main concerns for former FARC combatants and communities.
The state has not fulfilled its promises of social and economic reincorporation, of solving the judicial limbo of former combatants, who are very worried about how they will be treated by the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, and also feel insecure in the area after witnessing military operations there.
The Peace Commission will present a report to Congress regarding guarantees and security for former combatants. They will ask the government to enforce the peace agreements and to include productive projects for former combatants in the general national budget.
A vigil was held in St. Lucia for Botham Jean, who was shot and killed in his Dallas, U.S. home. A female police officer allegedly mistook Jean's apartment for her own and thought that he was an intruder. The officer has been arrested on a manslaughter charge.
I felt that it was robbing St. Lucia, robbing the world of a leader, a God-fearing citizen, a positive soul, a gem.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along and find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur. Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Dozens of people from indigenous communities in Guatemala have taken to the streets. Demonstrators are protesting the decision of President Jimmy Morales to expel the International Commission Against Impunity from the country. They are saying this only protects pro-government forces and congressmen from the ruling party. 60 social movements have joined the protests. Our correspondent Santiago Buton explains.
30 to 40,000 people from the 48 areas of the Totonicapán region have been peacefully protesting against the government of Jimmy Morales, and especially against impunity and injustice. The peaceful protests are concentrating in at least 4 strategic points of the Inter-American Highway that connects the Guatemalan capital with the South Mexican border. During these latest days of protest, all the different groups have included their demands and joined together in calling for the resignation of Jimmy Morales and to advocate for the continuity of the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala.
Chileans have paid tribute to the victims of the dictatorship with a memorial at the National Stadium in Santiago. They remember the 45th anniversary of the military coup against the late President Salvador Allende. The National Stadium became the main detention and torture center during the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. The 17-year-long regime left more than 3,200 dead and around 38,000 tortured.
As former prisoners, we have an ethical and moral duty to keep the memory alive and keep the record on everything that happened.
We have to remember. We have to remember something that hit us very hard in the country and is something too important in our history. We have to remember, and that's why I came here.
Fishing communities in Ecuador are the latest to be affected by the government's austerity measures. They say they are taking on an unfair share of the burden, while large corporations and multinationals stand to avoid paying penalties.
Ecuador's government has announced new diesel prices. The shrimp and fishing sector will see an increase in their diesel costs, in line with the government's austerity measures.
Diesel for the tuna and shrimp industry increased only 25 cents on its VAT. For other fishing industries, there will only be a 10 cents increase. Those numbers will remain the same for the next 2 years.
For some analysts, the measure doesn't make sense because not everyone uses diesel. If they had really wanted to save money, they should have revised gas prices.
There might be speculation, and that is what the fish and shrimp industries are worried about. That will make them lose competitiveness. Those are exporting sector in Ecuador, as a dollarized economy, must support them. I don't understand why these subsidies aren't focused on the sectors that bring dollars to the country.
The government said they have spoken with the fishing sectors. However, local fishing sectors say this measure just benefits big industries and doesn't respect their work.
We haven't been part of any agreement to exchange an increase in gas prices for an extension of artisanal waters of over 800 nautical miles for industrial ships to sail without problem. I make this call because they are only bringing poverty to the fishing communities and artisanal fishing. They are allowing abuse against maritime resources.
In light of the recent economic measures implemented by President Lenin Moreno, several social and political sectors are calling for a demonstration on September 13. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Quito, Ecuador.
Unions in Argentina are gearing up for massive protests against the ongoing financial crisis. Our correspondent Sabrina Roth explains.
On Wednesday, state workers are set to hold a national strike that will include mobilizations, roadblocks, and countrywide gatherings to demand an end to the austerity policies established by President Mauricio Macri, which have worsened thanks to the deal the government made with the IMF. Unions announced they will march to the Treasury to demand an increase in wages to match protected inflation rates. Part of these projects is also calling attention to the issues of sovereignty, land exploitation, and working conditions that several mines and nuclear power plants pose across the country, issues that have only worsened during Macri's administration.
And the most vulnerable in Argentina have invented a new way of protesting. They've set up soup kitchens on the street.
Soup kitchens have been installed in Argentina's street to showcase in what condition the most vulnerable sectors are living in, and also to demand respect for workers' union rights.
We need to discuss about resource distribution for the people most affected by the economic adjustment plan. We need to improve employment rates, tariffs, and food policies. Do everything to urgently solve the problems of people, especially children.
Macri's zero poverty plan never materialized. Rather, there has been an increase in poverty, unemployment, and rise in prices of basic products.
We must continue to fight, because this government still doesn't care about us. It just makes false promises saying we are on the right path. If they have to live just for a week in these neighborhoods, they'll notice that we are not fine. People are starving in our country. Leaving people in hunger is a crime. These are the consequences of this criminal government's economic model.
According to the Social Distress Observatory of the Catholic University of Argentina, the debt has not only increased poverty and affected people psychologically, but it has also affected human development and social integration.
This will at least feed some people, but the truth is that every day we can only provide lunch but not dinner. I have to take care of 5 children. How am I supposed to do that? My salary is not enough. I earn 4,000 pesos and a bit of extra money from here and there, but that's not enough for my whole family.
People have chosen to protest like this in the streets so that the government can see it and think about those living in difficult conditions. They will keep fighting for their social rights and better economic condition to overcome the growing poverty.
It has been 20 years since 5 Cuban citizens were arrested by the United States under spying charges. The group known as the Miami Five was convicted with a life sentence, but human rights organizations campaigned for the case to be appealed. By 2014, all of them were freed after a prisoner exchange agreement was reached between Cuba and the United States. And street vendors in Cuba are bringing back the century-old tradition of the pregón. The pregón is the art of singing humorous and rhyming ditties about their products. This tradition has made a comeback with the sounds such as reggaeton and electronic music. Cuba's pregoneros are positive their ditties are helping them to stand out. Trinidad and Tobago could finally be adopting the Caribbean Court of Justice as its final court of appeal. Even though the CCJ's headquarters is based in Trinidad, the country has long avoided even debating its adoption. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says that will change next year. Carriers in the Haitian province of Santiago have announced protests on Wednesday. They are angry about the rise in fuel prices. Carriers also want the authorities to change the hydrocarbon law. And Haitian President Jovenel Moïse has congratulated tennis player Naomi Osaka for winning the U.S. Grand Slam. Via Twitter, Moïse said Osaka's win is a tennis triumph for Haiti. Congratulations and thank you to our Naomi who've made us so proud, he wrote. Osaka's father is Haitian. The young athlete has always embraced her Haitian heritage. 1 year after several earthquakes shook Mexico, reconstruction is still on the way. Now, non-governmental organizations say corruption was part of the reason for the damage. It also withholds public funds from people in need. Our correspondent, Eduardo Martinez, explains.
On September 19, 2017, the home of Cristina Leiva collapsed. A 7.1 magnitude earthquake destroyed everything their family had. 1 year later, they are living in an improvised home they built with wood.
We don't have the same comfort. With the rain, everything gets wet, everything. We have to sleep in a very small place.
East of the city, they learned that the land where their houses were built are at high risk. They still don't know whether there's a plan to relocate them or to improve their buildings. The help they have received is limited.
Our house fell in the earthquake. I used to rent my house.
With that, I could pay everything and support my daughter, but now she is the only one who works.
A report published by the Mexicans Against Corruption and Impunity organization has gathered the stories of those who lost their lifelong belongings.
We learned about several irregularities regarding on how our house was built. After a year of the earthquake, we still continue to struggle.
The report also found a corruption network between authorities and construction companies. The earthquake left behind 369 people dead in the central and southern parts of the country.
With the documents linked to each property, it has become evident that the government ignored neighbors' complaints regarding the use of land, buildings without permits, or buildings that were damaged in the 1985 earthquake.
The investigation has also denounced that $140 million have been assigned to rebuilding the affected areas and that the victims are missing.
We'll take a short break now. We'll news this next.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Over 3,000 minors who were sexually abused by members of the Catholic Church over a 70-year period in Germany. Local media reported the news after a study commissioned by the German Bishops' Conference was published. Pope Francis has called for a meeting with senior clergymen from around the world. The European Union has approved sanctions against the Hungarian government for posing a threat to its democratic values. It's the first time the Strasbourg Parliament has turned to Article 7 of the EU Treaty. The sanction on Hungary is prompted by corruption cases, obstacles to the independence of the judiciary, and restrictions on refugees' right to asylum. A former employee at a detention center in the United States has been convicted of sexually abusing migrant minors. Levan Pacheco was found guilty of 7 counts of abuse. The boys were awaiting the results of their immigration cases. Pacheco will be sentenced on the 3rd of December. Morocco has approved a new law banning forced marriages. The bill was approved because of the growing number of cases of gender abuse. The new law criminalizes sexual violence and harassment as well. However, critics say that the law needs to be properly define domestic violence and even ban marital rape. Pro-whaling countries have derailed plans for a South Atlantic whale sanctuary. The plenary meeting of the International Whaling Commission failed to achieve the 3/4 majority to approve the project. The proposal was put forward by Argentina, Brazil, Gabon, South Africa, and Uruguay. Environmentalists are urging the Commission to take immediate action to protect whales.
We want to continue in this battle because we understand that we are on the right track. Every year, scientific checks derive mainly from results and surveys on the effects of climate change in the oceans show that it is necessary to create stronger protection conditions.
An Arab League meeting in Egypt's capital has discussed the U.S. decision to cut funding to the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul-Ghet said the United States is trying to undermine the legitimacy of the agency. He added that the decision would not change the determination with which UNRWA serves Palestinian refugees. Last month, the U.S. State Department announced it would be withdrawing all funding to the agency. A rare Egyptology manuscript has been restored and decoded. Experts say the 17th century document proves the contribution that ancient Egypt made to the Italian Renaissance. The Thesaurus Hieroglyphicorum was ruled up in centuries of dust, insects, and humidity. It was the Italian archaeological mission in Luxor that revealed its secrets. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sonia Gray. Thank you for watching.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to